Good morning and welcome to the new edition of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. We often see curious similarities, and one of the similarities is Jeff Bezos, Justin Trudeau on one side, India and Saudi Arabia on the other. There's no comparison between businessmen and just politicians. And there's no comparison between a strong nationalist country which says it's secular and a declared avowed theocratic country, a thriving democracy and an autocrat monarchy. And yet, a curious web of the circumstances brings them together. I'm referring to Canada's relationship with India and Saudi Arabia during the liberal period. Both are not very comfortable. India and Saudi Arabia with Canada. Same is true with Amazon chief, the richest man in the world, Jeff Bezos. Again, the recent visit, I'm referring to, of Amazon boss, Jeff Bezos in India, comes exactly 4 years after the disastrous Canadian Prime Minister's 2 years, 2018 and 2020. Whom do you blame? Jeff Bezos has no consolation that he is meeting the same fate as Justin Trudeau had met. And then another similarity. Both were garishly dressed to curry favor with the ethnic Indians and depended more on Bollywood than on diplomacy. Normally, businessmen are very staid, but not cool in the modern sense. They're cool otherwise in business negotiations. But here it was the other way around. The Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had invited along a Khalistani extremist convicted of attempted murder in Canada. And that naturally gave rise to ire, anger, frustration in India. And he spent 8 days there, 8 days, more than a week, power dressing in ethnic, garish Indian attire, while the powers that be handed over. A dressing down, a very effective dressing down too. Bezos on the other part, despite the results being the same, tried his level best to tick all the right boxes, except his dress. And even his relationship with Bollywood was business relationship because he was launching Amazon Prime. While Justin Trudeau could not connect either with the bureaucracy or with the political bosses. Bezos was very, very effective in praising songs of love and affection for India's small enterprise, declared that he felt inspired by India, talked about Indians' energy and grit, and then made promises, excellent promises to look at, 1 million jobs, and then the bait, investing $1 billion. And just in case someone was in doubt, he put all the things down in a letter posted to the Amazon site. But while you propose, the powers that be dispose. New Delhi sees it, 1 million jobs, $1 billion a year stored dollars, and the scores of polite words are not making up for the bad stuff that Amazon is going to do to sons of soil, brick and mortar retailers. India has a huge retailing sector, huge. There is no street corner where the local Banyan shop is not there, the local shop is not there, and people make a beeline to that because they do not store things. They go there and buy that material as and when required, and they are at the part. And Amazon's pricing is, let's not deny, predatory, crooked, and all the intentions iffy. And I don't blame that because that's the way cutthroat competition has to be. After all, Amazon has no love for the jacket that he was wearing. He was wearing it only as a sport to send a right message. And that doesn't do. Traders, when they start to become Billy politicians, they can buy politicians, but they cannot try to overawe people. People see through them. And then the newspapers, both in Canada and in USA, were critical of the regime in India. Washington Post has been extremely critical of all the actions of Modi government without understanding a single bit about those policies. All this crying about the CAA, and before that about Modi, and before that about Article 370 being sent to the cold storage, or rather to the hospice to die. That is not acceptable. That cannot be acceptable. So Alexa may be speaking in Hindi and telling stories from Panchtantra, but there is no happy ending like Jeff's Indian story at this time. Trudeau failed because of his immature interference and support for the Khalistanis. Even the ministers, they are tinged by the extremists, though they are now very careful about what they say. Actually, one of the ministers had been in jail for 2 years for terrorist activities in India. And India doesn't forget that. No country can forget that, or should forget that. Wearing kurtas and dancing bhangras does not impact political and diplomatic decisions. They can only make you look like one of your own outsidely, and when they say, well, look, he's dancing, it may be with a contemptuous smile. And that's what happened to Trudeau. He failed diplomatically, and the biggest market for the Canadian pulses was lost to Canada. Same is about Jeff. Jeff's problem is that India, which country doesn't? And $1 billion is not something to sneeze at. But that's debatable. And still the $1 billion is flowing into the economy to fuel economic activity. Then who would object to it? But the Flipkart or Amazon killing organized retail is hard to scare with the basic facts. In short, as a matter of fact, I have some sympathy with Jeff. His conduct was not as bad as of Justin, but both got a slap on the wrist. For the last 2 weeks have been remarkably eventful for Jeff. First, the Amazon's co-founder visit to India, but met with street-side protests, an antitrust investigation into predatory pricing and unfair practices, and hostile comments from the government led by Modi. When Bezos tried to mend relations, his request for meeting with Modi was turned down, and then tangled with Saudi Arabia. That burst into headlines. And cybersecurity investigators concluded with high confidence that his phone was hacked via WhatsApp message sent from Crown Prince Mohammed Salman's account. Now, there are two different situations in two separate parts of the world, but they have something in common. An overly optimistic bet Amazon had placed along with the big brethren on the global leaders, whose dispositions turned out to be less open. Amazon's first big bet was in India in 2014, when he stood on the top of a flatbed in a ceremonial Indian wedding dress and presented his local chief in India with oversized 2 billion check. Modi met him at that time, and it was all goodwill. He believed that Modi would loosen India's restriction on the foreign trade, and e-commerce companies could operate much more. I remember Jack Ma had met me way back. He started Alibaba and he wanted me to help him set up Alibaba in India. I told him at that time, no, this is not the opportune time. There's a time for everything. But then regulations in India are now more streamlined. And no political party in India can afford to annoy the base of the small businesses. And Modi's major base is the small traders, the Bania group. How can he deny them? And it's a fact that while gaining market share for Walmart, there was huge losses to Amazon in the last fiscal years. And then why should Modi annoy Flipkart, the front piece of Walmart, who have established themselves in India? Similarly, Bezos' relationship with Saudi Arabia, and also Justin's relationship with Saudi Arabia. Justin went on the wrong footing in the murder of Khashoggi. He should have kept his mouth shut. But his deputy prime minister started tweeting, the present deputy prime minister, and she had no business doing that. You do not run diplomacy through tweets. It's only exceptionally gifted people like Trump who can do it. Ordinary mortals are not supposed to have diplomatic releases through tweets, and Freeland did so. Bezos and Prince Mohammed met in 2018 at a dinner party in LA. And as usual, Mohammed Sulaiman showed him that Saudi Arabia is opening up and diversifying its oil-based economy. And immediately Amazon said, okay, we'll have 2.2 billion deal. But the arrangement was put on hold after Washington Post started Khashoggi's murder because he was one of the contributors to Khashoggi. Now, people forget. They say that the press is independent. It is not. Let's be very clear. By no stretch of imagination can I ever believe that press in any country is 100% independent. It's not. It's biased. I can agree that the boss, in this case Jeff, may not have sent messages directly to the Washington Post direct editor asking him to put anti-Modi or anti-Crown Prince articles. I fully agree. There may have been no policy document, but a nod to the wise man is sufficient. You don't have to put in writing. A smile, a smirk, a twitching of the nose, and a wrinkle in the brow is sufficient to send a message. And that's what has been happening. Secondly, look at Canada. Do you mean to say CBC can do anything without a nod from the government? howsoever independent its writers may be. And in case it's fully independent, do you mean to say 100% writers are in favor of the policies, however stupid they may be, of the government? If it was so, then all the writers writing for the National Post would be writing against the policies, while Globe and Mail and Toronto Star and CBC in its talks is supporting. Same is about Washington Post. Because Jeff and Trump do not see eye to eye, so Washington Post is against him. Why is it CNN is opposed and Fox is in favor of Trump? It's simply because the bosses that are the real bosses, their body language, their thoughts, their vibrations travel to the journalists. And even while not openly being influenced, they are impacted definitely. So to say that the press is fully independent and these people don't interfere in it, well, I don't buy it. And no sensible person would buy it. Nevertheless, Jeff and Justin have proved themselves to be absolute failures as far as these complex countries like India and Saudi Arabia are concerned. That shows one thing, A, that people still think that India is a country of snake charmers and jugglers, and the people who can be exploited. It is not so. People still think that Saudi Arabia is a monarchy where the kings are only involved in luxury and looting and killing. It is not so. People in both the countries are highly educated and highly sensitive. And when you prick the skin, that prick can become painful, agonizing, and the person who pricks would have is just desserts. Maybe there's agitation in just Jeff and Justin. Well, that's the way it is. That's the way human beings react. And the reaction of India and the reaction of Saudi Arabia was fully justified. No politician or businessman has a right to take for granted either any country or any market. Don't you agree? Think about it. Thank you.